I spent 16 months creating and designing my own wedding dress.
I'm not a professional seamstress or a fashion designer, but I'm not entirely out of my wheelhouse because I am a cosplayer. And I've made crazy stuff before. Tailored jackets, ball gowns, giant mikus. So a gown, a skirt. Do you know how hard pants are? Making it isn't the problem. Making it became a problem. But in the beginning, the problem was making decisions. I'm used to working off character designs, things some other more talented artist created that I trace over in a different medium. But there's no reference for this project. I can do whatever I want. But what do I do? Designing this thing terrified me. I went through countless sketches of varying styles and quality. But there was one thing I knew for certain. People talk about trying to remember what you as a child pictured yourself in on your wedding day, feeling like you owe it to your former self who thought of weddings as magical. That vision came for my dumbass 13-year-old self when I saw a picture of my grandma in her 1950s Italian silk dubioni gown, which I have right here. It is a gorgeous, gathered and ruffled circle skirt that cascades into a train adorned with the most delicate little bows and features a crazy-shaped bust because it was made to be worn with a cone bra. I knew for sure I wanted a near exact copy of this skirt. But the bodice drove me crazy. And even though I was far from figuring that out, I knew that I had to start with the undergarments first. And for me, that means a corset. I'll save you the 30 minutes it would take to explain all of this and just hand you the corset video, but I will tell you the tale of my quest for two breasts at rest. Basically, I decided that I wanted a deep V, and for some reason, illusion mesh is cheating. Because if I can make giant dancing wigs, then I can control two tits. At first, I thought I could get away with this weird forked boning channel, but the girls were still swaying too much for comfort, so I added an underwire harvested from an old bra, and that kinda helped. Oh, I gotta cover this boob. Because we're doing a deep V that I have to cover right now because it's not entirely working yet because the underwire is only on that side and there's no other boning in it. First day I get with Joe not home and I do this and I got to spin around in my kitchen for a second. I was like, you dumb bitch, this is bridal. This will become part of my wedding dress. This has been lazily pleated into a waistband. But I am wearing pieces of my wedding dress. But other than this titty not behaving, this titty is behaving. I mean, not entirely. So I called a Hail Mary to save me from the dreaded yellow circle and made this terrifying capital V out of 9-gauge wire that put those two titties at attention. This whole time, I felt like if I could do anything, then I had to do something extraordinary, avant-garde, but that's not really what I wanted. I want to look like the bride that little Sarah envisioned, and this is it. So by the almighty power of a corset, I had my design. Kind of. Because then it was like, well, what about beading? I love beading. I want beading. But what do I do? I'm not doing 100 strawberries again. I don't know where that patience went, but I think I left it wherever I put my serotonin, and I have not seen that in years. I wanted something small on the bodice, but I wanted a design that meant something and went with our wedding's theme of smashing all of our favorite fantasy things together until they're a weird, creepy, cute amalgamate of books and video games. Don't know if you've ever noticed that Prima Guide page behind me, but fairies were happening. But it was actually one of Joe's wishes for the wedding that gave me my final idea. He wanted hanging banners of made-up family sigils. Joe likes wolves, but like not in a furry way. He just thinks they're neat. So he chose a wolf. But for mine, I took a bunch of references from my favorite video games, which all have a through line of a giant tree, with the ultimate inspiration coming from the 2002 MMORPG Final Fantasy XI's flag for the Federation of Windrest, a game I have a lot of feelings about. This one killed it. You see this? 2010. This is when it was bad. I played it when it was bad, and then it killed that one. I hate it now. Anyway, it's basically exactly the windy flag, but also with a little bit of the Halig tree design featured on Melania's cloak from Elden Ring. But I spent the entire month of September embroidering white on white, beading the outline to cover up my very uneven embroidered edges, and filling in my tree with iridescent bugle beads and shiny, shiny bicones that glint so much in person. But the camera never picks them up. But believe me, she's sparkly. And with the beading finished, I could finally get started creating the bodice of my wedding gown. This has been hooped up for so long that I'm a little scared it's gonna have hoop burn, but I am way more scared of cutting it out. Here she comes! Wow! I don't know why I'm so scared. It's fine. Oh, that's really pretty. So I'm gonna serge this real quick. I already have all of my other pieces ready, and they are just dull bridal satin that has been flatlined with the wall on top, which I think is very fancy. And I just flatlined them on my serger, and yes, I was too lazy to change the pink serging cones, and no, I don't care because you will never see it. The other thing I did is this sneaky little trick to make sure this fits perfectly over the corset. I actually cut the seam allowance off of my pattern so that I could mark the pattern exactly where the seam goes. So then I can sew all of my pieces together with a line showing me exactly where I'm supposed to sew. So now I have to try to sew together the center panel with these side pieces without breaking a needle on these beads. I did mark on this where the actual seam is going to go, but the beads did end up getting very close to it. So what I have done, I put on my adjustable zipper foot, which will hopefully let me sew right next to those beads without actually hitting them. Please do not mess up an entire month of work. Here we go. Slowly, slowly. This part's right here. Yes, yes, yes. Home run. Oh yeah. You can't see that. Oh yeah. Look at her. Right up against that seam. No broken needles. I'm gonna do the other one. And then I'm gonna press these seams very awkwardly. And then I'm gonna hold it up. And we get to see it. Okay. Oh ho ho. Oh ho ho. Oh my god. It is so sparkly. I had a hunch that once I saw it on me, I would be like, that's not enough beading. And that's exactly how I feel about it. It is not quite enough beading. And I have been thinking that I will probably want to do some kind of auxiliary beading on the outer hemispheres of the bust, and I think I want to do that. So I didn't actually do the extra beading until December because a stupid reality show video took over my entire life that winter, but I did get it done and I absolutely loved the addition. It really makes those bust hemispheres flow. This wouldn't be the end of the beading, but I was just too excited to see what the tree looked like with the deep V cut out, so I just went for it. I went for the V first because it was the scary part, because if I sewed it unevenly, it would look super obvious, and if I missed the line, I could hit and break a bead or a needle on that like button. Please hit a like button, break a needle on that like button, please. But I got it in and got just the top sewn together so that I could see how it all turned out, and I wish I was filming my face when I did this, because I was shocked. This was beautiful, and I didn't break any needles. But I still wanted more sparkle, because the back was looking kind of naked. And at this point, I was done with the overthinking, and I just started doing stuff. I freehand drew a branch design in heat erase pen and just went at it with bugle beads. I had been so afraid to make design decisions up front, which honestly has kind of been a problem my entire professional career. If you don't know, I used to be a full-time motion designer, which in my case means a graphic design animator. Weirdly, when that was my job, I would wish for projects where people just told me what they needed me to do and I could just make stuff without actually having to be creative, because enough micromanagement will do that to you. And back then, cosplay and sewing, that was how I got to be creative in any way I wanted. But cosplays come with templates, and my wedding dress doesn't. But seeing how gorgeous those bugle bead branches looked, it got me to the point where I felt like I knew what direction I was going in. I knew I liked that direction, and that I was free to go for it. It didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be symmetrical. I just have to like it. And let me tell you, I love it. At this point, the next thing to do with the bodice would be to combine it with that corset layer, but that would mean no more changes to the bodice, so instead of speaking now or holding my peace, I shoved it all into the closet and went on to the skirts. So while the style of the skirt is based on my grandma's wedding dress, the actual composition of the layers is more based on Lyrica Matoshi's strawberry dress and its 3 total skirts. 2 full circle skirts, capped with a ruffle, and a massively gathered circle skirt with an aggressive ruffle. When a skirt is in the shape of a literal circle, well, donut actually, it means you'll have lots of flowy fabric at the bottom with little to no bulk at the waist, which makes for maximum puddle potential. A gathered circle skirt is also a literal donut, but its donut hole is much larger than your waist. So you get these gorgeous gathers like the Lyrica Matoshi fruit frock. But if I did all of the layers gathered like that, I'd end up with a lot of bulk at the waist to deal with, so that's why those inner skirts are only single Pringle circle skirts. But in the end, I should end up with a skirt that's very full at the bottom without poofing out like a princess, because the main thing I want is a really dynamic twirl and puddle. I want a puddle photo, please. But the last thing I want is to look like the skirt is wearing me. The 2 inner skirts went together the same way, with the only notable thing being 2 pocket slits on the side seams, because for once I'm gonna do almost actually 18th century pockets, let's go. The only difference was the cotton skirt got its ruffle done with the Kiralee Cosplay's lazy lady method, which is maybe better described as pleats on the fly. It's literally just approximately evenly pinning the ruffle and then forcing it all into pleats on the fly on the machine. The middle layer had to be a real ruffle because it might get seen, so I had to do the old 2 lines of stitches across the top and sit there and pull and measure them and pray that the thread doesn't snap. But then, for the outermost skirt, I spent hours and hours and hours stitching, pulling, fiddling, and measuring a 23-yard strip of fabric to turn it into a nearly 7-yard ruffle. For reference, this skirt's circumference is 3 times the size as the last 2, and its ruffle is 3 times the size of that. It is big. And what's sad is this one actually totally could have been done with the lazy lady method, but you'll find out why later. Anyway, I got all that onto the skirt, got the skirt gathered too, and got it all twirl tested. And then all the skirts got shoved into a bag for a month or 2 before I got annoyed that they were not done yet. So instead of actually finishing them, I tried them on unhemmed, only to get even more annoyed that they were still not done without me doing anything. And this made me so mad that I threw caution to the wind and just started cutting them. I should probably tell you that I was actually going for a T length, or in my mind, the length of Chad Michaels' executive realness runway from Drag Race Season 4. That was the goal, so somehow my measurements were very wrong, which also made me annoyed at my own inability to do math to the point that I passed the max level of annoyance that you're allowed to bring to a sewing project without...
I may have made a mistake here. That's not really what I wanted. Is it what I wanted? I don't know.
That is what I wanted. That looks great.
I don't know that this looks bad, but it's not really what I was going for, but I don't think it looks bad.
Somehow, I mismeasured everything, and now the skirt was too short, the ruffle was in the wrong place, and it was not giving executive realness at all. But instead of redoing everything like a normal person, I went forward instead of back. I grabbed the offcuts from the hem, got them into a new, even strip of fabric to fix the length, and created a new, grand ruffle to cover up my sins.
I was this close to the end. That's the end right there? That's how far from the end I was. And this happened.
Yikes. I basically remade the biggest ruffle again, except this time with a fold over and couching gathers done with iridescent yarn. So it was less painful than the last ruffle that it now sat directly on top of. And it adds more sparkle. Speaking of which, it needed more of that. So I hit it with a ton of rhinestones, tiny, tiny rhinestones, like the tiniest ones you can get. Going in, I thought the skirt was going to be the easiest, so it's wild that it actually took a lot of trial and error. But I do think in the end it became a great tribute to my grandmas. You may know that I actually lost my grandma a few years ago. She was a quilter, and I inherited one of her prized possessions, her sewing machine, the fancy Pfaff with all the bells and whistles. But she did a lot more than quilt. She was a singer, a pianist, an artist, a painter. She was apparently almost a professional ice skater or something. But the thing that stuck with my entire family most was that she sewed, because she would make literally everyone in the family Grammy jammies every Christmas. This woman made many jammies, okay? And she shared that value for creativity with her entire flock. So to now have a life built upon what she instilled in me, I gotta say, if you like my work, let's get some thank you grandmas in the comments. Let's talk about something stupid. Weddings are stupid. Weddings are cringe, but weddings are supposed to be stupid and cringe. They're one of the few excuses in life you have to let everyone you know witness your own peak cringe. So we can do whatever we want, whatever we don't want to. We decided that our knot tying or candle lighting thing was going to be a cloak exchange like they do in them dragon books. Though our vows are ripped right from the I wrote all these cool monsters for you to fight, but your final boss is your mental health book. All that to say, next up is the cloak, which I'm making in sheer voile again, so that I don't fully cover up all the work that I just did. The pattern for this thing is literally a giant circle, just like the skirt, but much bigger. And when I got this thing on the dress form, every little insecurity I had about this design jumped off the rampart.
Okay, I just wanted to see how this looked pleated. And bitch. This big ass pleat. Oh my god, I didn't even mean to do that, but I ended up just accidentally doing robe à la française pleat. And it's fucking beautiful. That's the back. Here's the front. It's too long because, I don't know, I over-measured everything, but that's better than under-measuring, you know? But god damn. What do you think, kitty? She's beautiful. And, I didn't mean for this to happen, but it is kind of given Daenerys Targaryen. I knew with how large the cloak was and how I wanted it hanging off my shoulders, I was going to need to heavily rely on it being supported by the bodice itself, but the bodice wasn't finished yet, so to avoid having a hemming issue like I just had with these skirts, I paused on the cape for now and went back to finish the crazy bodice that I started months ago. So the bodice was still in two pieces, the corset and the cover. The corset had never actually gotten its bones put in, so I finally got those cut, filed, and shoved into place. And despite writing myself a note to do the backbones before I did the grommets like a normal person, for some reason I punched the holes first and then had to add bias tape to compensate, but it was fine. You won't see this layer because I'm about to cover it all up. And you might be like, okay, if the bodice is in two pieces right now, why are you putting the grommets in? Why are you covering them up? Won't the bodice be its own piece? Are you gonna put the corset inside it? Why would you do that, lady? Somebody call Bernadette Banner. I have a corset crime to report. Yes, no, yes, and I do what I want. I'm gonna put the corset inside the bodice because of the deep V. But the grommets won't get actually covered up because what I'm doing now is actually just lining them both up so I can mark where the grommets will be, because the cover is actually getting machine eyelets, mostly because I didn't have white grommets and I wanted them to be white. And this way, if I do need to separate them, I still can. And if I put the grommets through all of the layers, I wouldn't be able to take them apart. But with all of those in, I could slip the cover onto the corset and finally remove the notes that I've had pinned to it since last summer. Now that I had the bodice mostly finished, there was a problem. My dress form doesn't have arms, and the cape goes around my arms. So I was going to need some help to hem it, but that wouldn't come for months. So while I waited, I was forced to face the biggest question: what the fuck do I put on my head? I bounced between French hoods and giant ruff. Berets were in consideration, but you have no idea how hard it is to find a pure white beret. It's impossible. But with like 6 months left, I said, screw it, I want a hat.
and it's primarily inspired by my friend Pins's Lanchnet Mario hat. I did buy feathers to put on the back, but decided I wanted a triqueta instead. My first exposure to this symbol was the TNT show Charmed. I used to watch it with my mom, who now says that she literally prays to our female line like they did in the show. So while to some people this symbolizes the cycle of life or the topology of the symbol is not, to me it symbolizes matriarchy, Ren Fair coins, and Vsauce thumbnails. I'm kind of at a weird place with this. First of all, I'm not gonna have that moment where, you know, people go dress shopping and they look at different dresses and, ooh, everybody's happy, and, like, I could have gone to try on dresses, but to me that would have felt dishonest. That would have made me feel like I was lying to people that work service jobs, and that's not something I'm willing to do. One of the things that is particularly not fun about this is that I keep avoiding sending photos to stuff to, like, my friends, and that's so different than, like, doing cosplay stuff where I'll send my friends or my patrons, like, you know, I'll show the internet stuff as it's happening, but I don't want to do that with this. And my mom has even said she doesn't want to see it until it's totally done. And I've sent a few things to Pins. Pins is, like, the only person I've really been showing this to, but even then I'm like, I kind of want to surprise Pins. But at this point, I need help. I need hem help. I messed up the hem for the skirt, and I don't have any room to hide anything on the cape. So Pins might have to see this early. I'm not a traditional person, and we are not having a traditional wedding in any sense. There are some traditions I feel like I'm missing out on that I didn't think I would care about. But I've got 6 months left, and I still have so much shit to do. Probably the biggest downside of making your own wedding dress is the intense delayed gratification. Obviously, when you buy a dress, you have to wait for it to come in and get altered and all that, but you at least get to try it on in the store. You know immediately how it will look, how you'll feel in it, and I had to wait a year to have that. I started working on this just a couple weeks after we got engaged in July of 2024, and I had to put it down for bad reality shows, Don cosplays, and giant trees, so it wasn't until July of 2025 that I finally had it all ready to try on.
Okay. No, it's the scene in every 2000s prom scene where it's like, kiss me, do 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 do.
I was doing the SpongeBob scene.
Look at you!
Oh my god.
You saw that! It goes like this. Look at that!
Oh yeah.
And finally, with the friends I needed, Pins took to their namesake and sat on the floor for 30 minutes to use every pin I owned to mark and level a hem so that I could take it to the serger for one last rolled hem. I'm sure you're wondering if this task is even worth doing. Obviously, I saved a lot of money by making mine. I chose an inexpensive fabric and I got it on sale. I used a lot of stuff that I just had. The most expensive thing was the feathers that I barely used, but the money you put into buying a gown covers all the things I had trouble with. You aren't just paying for the construction, you're also paying for the design. You've put those difficult decisions in the hands of a person who has the experience to know what works and what doesn't. When I first implied that I would be making mine, I got a lot of people telling me, oh, don't do that. That's the ultimate hubris, and they're not wrong. I'm not a fashion designer, and I'm not a professional seamstress. I'm really just an artist who gets to wear her own art. So for me, it doesn't matter if the construction is entirely professional or if it's a little bit all over the place with the eras or styles, or that it's made of polyester and not silk, because I want to be wrapped in my own creativity, wrapped in the symbols of things that I love, that have inspired and defined who I am as a person. And yes, it's kind of goofy that most of those are from video games, but it's also my grandma, my chosen family, and none of those things would be possible if I didn't create them with my own hands. The weird thing about being a cosplayer is that my wedding dress might not actually be the most beautiful thing or most well-constructed thing that I ever wear, but it's the most beautiful thing I will ever wear that is solely supposed to represent me, and I think it does beautifully.